have been given the privilege of being able to see through gospel lens. And yet they didn't put that lens on because they decided to see through their own eyes
To build themselves up.
And they only saw through the lens of law. This is why Paul ends up saying, man, they have a veil before their face.
Something that's covering their vision.
Something that's covered. And that veil is only removed through Christ. Welcome back to The Move, where we are vibing with the book 10 minutes at a time.
The next 10 minutes, we're looking at Romans chapter 10, verses 14 to 21.
Yes, Lord.
You reading it right now? Is that what you're doing right now?
I actually was. But I read it before. So that the question then has to be, have you read it?
There you go.
Yeah, so go ahead and read it.
Well, here, we'll let him finish reading
Me
it.
and Justin are going to be on pause for a second, waiting for you.
And now we're back. 10 minutes
Go.
starting in 3, 2, 1. Let's go.
So, what was it, verse 14? 14. Yeah, this is good. How then will they call on him who they have not believed?
So this is the logical wow, what is going on? This is the logical progression in the thought that Paul is giving. Wow, that salvation is not based off of ascending to the heights or the depths. It's not about what you do, but it's simply about this belief that's in your heart and that you profess with your mouth. So therefore, if salvation is available to the Gentiles, well then how are the Gentiles supposed to be able to call on him who they've not believed?
Well, Justin, I would actually turn that on its head.
Okay.
Because the audience that he has in mind is Israel.
Oh.
So that it is Israel who has not believed. Because he's asking this rhetorical question, well, how are they going to call on him who they haven't believed? And it's this idea of then, somebody has to go preach to them. Mm-hmm. But then Paul draws attention to the prophecies of Isaiah
In verse 16.
that he says, no, how beautiful are the feet of those who have preached the good news.
Wow. It's coming to me now. I've always used this verse as an impetus to challenge my friends and family, fellows in the church, saying, therefore you need to go out and preach to the people who have never heard. You're saying, not what you're saying, the text is saying that the people in question are the people who have already preached.
Yeah.
In other words, there have been messengers that God has been sending out from the very beginning to his own people.
And let's talk about some of those messengers. For instance, in verse 18, and I'll come back to 16. Okay. But in verse 18, their voice has gone out to all the earth and their words to the ends of the world. Who's he talking about right there? Go to Psalm 19.
That's all past tense. That's not future tense.
Exactly. Psalm 19, I have it on my computer. I'll just read a little bit to it. The heavens declare the glory of God, and the sky above proclaims his handiwork. Day to day pours out speech, and night to night reveals knowledge. There is no speech, nor are there words whose voice is not heard. Their voice goes through all the earth, and their words to the end of the world. In them he has set a tent for the sun, which comes out like a bridegroom leaving his chamber. So Paul is alluding this idea that nature, all glory and nature alike, testify to God's love.
Which is a callback to the beginning of the book.
Yep. That nature, so that God has spoken, right? This is Hebrews as well, right? God has spoken in diverse manners and in different ways, right? Nature is a revelation of God, and that nature agrees with what God has spoken in, say, the prophets, and what he has spoken in these last days, his son. And what Paul is alluding to is that the nation of Israel, who actually had received the oracles of God, and they have oracles of God that have festivals and feasts and a rhythm of time that actually agrees with nature, that is revealing the good gospel.
You're talking about some of the kind of habitual rituals that would take place on a yearly cycle,
Yeah.
the feasts of booths, the
Yeah.
feasts of first fruits,
Yeah.
that there was this entire ecosystem that Israel participated in with their agricultural system. And yet all of that was prophetic. We're talking about the purpose of the law here, and that pointed to Jesus. So even in what they were seeing in nature testified of what was to come.
And not only in nature, but also in their law that used elements of nature.
Yeah.
Right? I could think of, there's one, and as I'm just drawing back, there is one offering that I think it's for a leper uncleanliness, that you take a dove, right?
Okay.
And you tie, and I'm trying to, recall back right here, but you tie hyssop to its branch. It's two doves. One of them you break its neck and you let its blood spill over fresh water, and then the other one, from the blood of that one, you tie hyssop to the blood and let that dove go free. Right? So that in this imagery, you have the blood of the dead one is now spilt on a piece of nature that is flying over the earth, and the blood is dripping down, so that blood would rain down in redemption, while blood is also spilling into the waterways, redeeming all of creation.
Okay, so I'm going to play this part of ignorance where I'm saying, huh? Because part of that is true.
Yeah.
Explain that to me.
So it's just, I don't want to take the time to Google it because the amount of time we have. It's in a great book that does this breakdown. It's called The Cross and Its Shadow by S.N. Haskell.
Great book.
A great book. Check it out if you dare. And he does this reading of demonstrating, for instance, how the ceremonial laws used elements of nature in order to testify to the redemption of nature. I'm just drawing an allusion or a parallel between what he highlights and what Paul is highlighting, that there are all these elements that actually speak the gospel. And let's move on. We only have so much time.
Okay, where do you want to move to?
Isaiah 53.
There you go.
That's also quoted in verse 16, right? Isaiah 53. It says, Lord, who has believed what he has heard from us? And we know Isaiah 53 is a messianic prophecy about the suffering servant who is Jesus Christ, suffering on behalf of the sins of Israel. So this question is being asked, who's going to go to Israel to preach? And Paul's saying,
They already had the preacher.
no. They know. Like, you want to teach them about baptism? They were all baptized into Moses.
Yeah.
You want to teach them of repentance? God gave them the truth of repentance, right? You're going to teach them about the Messiah? They have the oracles of God. Like, the Messiah is in there. Think about it. When Jesus is resurrected and he's walking on the road to Emmaus, I've often thought, what's the easiest way to convince two unbelieving disciples that you're resurrected?
Just to show up.
He showed up. And yet he doesn't say,
Hey guys, it's me.
right? He's like, ta-da.
He instead goes to the very text that they were talking about, Isaiah.
Why? Because he's saying,
When they connect the dots, when they see the oracles that they have been given point to the embodiment of it himself,
yeah,
light bulbs go off.
right there. So they have the message. We have preached to them. God has preached to them. And verse 20, then Isaiah is bold to say, I have been found by those who did not seek me. I have shown myself to those who did not ask for me. So Israel has a revelation of God in nature. They have a revelation of God in his oracles. They have been given the privilege of being able to see through gospel lens. And yet they didn't put that lens on because they decided to see through their own eyes
To build themselves up.
to build themselves up, and they only saw through the lens of law. This is why Paul ends up saying, man, they have a veil before their face.
Something that's covering their vision.
Something that's covered. And that veil is only removed through Christ.
Yeah.
And he's arguing, and he's saying that it's prophetic, that Isaiah prophesied that the Gentiles would receive it, even though they didn't have the setup of having the oracles, that they would hear the story of Jesus, that Spirit would burn in them, like they would receive and be like, yes, that thing. And in receiving that, then Paul's saying, look, Israel, you had it, and yet a people who didn't received it.
It's really interesting. Where does that leave God in that journey? 21 talks about all day long have I held out my hands to a disobedient and contrary people. There's a sense of frustration in that moment, and yet we know that God to be long-suffering and patient. Yeah. And we get to that in 11, but pausing before that point, what is it like there for God to just be holding his hands out the entire time waiting?
here's what strikes me is that we might read it as frustration, but it's not.
Maybe it's determination.
It's just,
Maybe it's the determination to be holding his hands out
yeah,
for his people.
yeah. That's the sort of God that we have, that we serve, and
That even when rejected, he would still go to the full distance.
and he continues to hold his hands out, even if the people are disobedient. Because what would we do if somebody disobeys or runs away from what we offer, right? So,
Fool me once.
yeah, shame on you.
Mhm.
Fool me twice, shame on me. So I offer you this free thing. Like, oh, you got my phone. He's like, nah, I don't want that. No, I'll take it. No, I don't want that. No, I'll take it. No. All right,
Forget
fine.
you then.
Now you find yourself in need of a phone because this one gets cracked, right? You're like, hey, Jonathan, can I get that phone?
Nah, bro.
Nah,
You
son.
lost your chance.
Oh, the offer was literally on the table, and now it's off
now
the
it's
table,
off.
right? But what does he say?
Still offering it
All the day long.
all day long.
All the day long.
That's a good God. That's good grace. That's a good God, huh?
Yeah,
That's a
yeah.
song that we've been singing
That's
lately.
right. Clean hands, pure hearts, good grace, good God. His name is Jesus. So yeah, man, that's that. We'll leave him with about 5 seconds.
All right, guys. We'll see you in the next episode.
Next 10.